The average Australian treats their house like a fucking ATM. They go out and they use that equity to go buy something silly that's non-income producing, for example, a car. Don't go into the rabbit hole of trying to need to know everything. Just like business, outsource it to the expert. Build the investments and the passive incomes, then use that to fund the silly stuff in life. Do whatever you need to do to get your foot in the door.
Welcome to the Creative Grid, the podcast for creative entrepreneurs who are hungry to have more impact, make more money, and become successful in every area of life. I'm your host, Nelson, and your journey to mastering life and business begins in 3, 2, 1. Welcome back, fam, to another episode of the Creative Grid. Today, we have another extraordinary guest, and I'm gonna tell you the truth, I'm extremely excited because this is something that has been coming a lot into my awareness, and probably at some point, I would like to get into it. So I'm very keen to get into this conversation deep with the #1 property coach in Australia. And she's here to help millennials fast track their way into their property portfolio, build more cash flow, and escape the matrix. Please welcome the legend, Olivia Ward.
What an introduction, man. You just like riffled that off. I love you.
Yeah, I know. I do my research. Thank you. Liv, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, man.
I'm just going to dive straight into it.
Let's go for it.
What's a property coach?
Oh, a property coach is somebody who essentially has gone before you and just can help you fast track your overall wealth, so that way you can build wealth easier and get the highest ROI on life. That's what it is for me. Just helping free the average Australian and democratizing the property world, because a lot of people look at property as, oh my God, you need to be really rich or you're some sort of successful business person. Oh, that's the only type of person that can get into property. Not true. So that's what I do essentially, is just help people say, no, you've got this, you can do this, and here's a bunch of hacks and tips and tricks around how to get the bank to give you more money.
I like that because from your content, I can tell that you're basically talking to your everyday people and almost making them realize that it is possible for almost anyone to get into investing into property. So I'm very keen to dive a little bit deeper into the why.
Thanks,
of
man.
that.
Thanks.
What are your credentials that make you a top 1% property investor?
Okay. So, first of all, I reached the top 1% of property investors in my 20s whilst only earning 55 grand a year as a call center worker working at Optus. Dead set. So, if you have a think about it for a minute, I'm a little in my 20s walking around this corporate office as a call center worker, slugging away at it, and somehow I reached the top 1%. Now, the top 1% is classified once you get to basically 5 properties or more in Australia. Sometimes the data slightly changes. Sometimes it's like 6 properties, right? Depending on the data in that particular year. But let's just say 5 or 6 properties, you're in the top 1%. Now, how's this for a start? Fortunately, in Australia, 90-something percent, about 92 or 94% of millionaires are made from property. What? 92 or 94% of millionaires made from real estate. But the other side is, unfortunately, 90% of Australians get stuck on 2 properties. That's so sad, that stat. So only 1% get to 5 or more. So when I was walking around this corporate office, right, first of all, I'd helped a couple of my best friends at Optus start following me. And I was like, no, man, do this, do that. Don't do this. Nah, fuck that. Learn this, learn that. And then I realized that I was like taking extra breaks so I could go and help them. So I realized, fuck me, I'm so passionate. I'd finish my 8-hour shift and I'd smash it out in 4 hours, and I'd go help the rest of the fucking office how to build their own property portfolio and how to build wealth and passive income outside of this, crazy 9-to-5 work. So that was one pivotal moment, was helping other people. And then I realized, oh, fuck yeah, I love it. But then the second thing was when I was walking around this office, and mind you, I'm quite a social bumblebee, right? So I'm a big networker, and I had a lot of people high up in the corporate industry, earning $300,000, $500,000. To me, I was just like, whoa, you're so successful. And then they'd talk about that, they'd ask you, oh, what are you doing on the weekend? I'm like, oh, I just went to another property thing. And they're like, oh, you're into property. They're like, how many you got? And I'll be like, oh, I've got 5 or I've got 6. And they're like, sorry, what? And they'll be like, how on earth did you get that? I'm on 3-5 times your income and I'm stuck on 1 or 2 investment properties. How on earth did you do it? And then that was kind of a bit of a shift of a moment. I was like, ooh, there's something here that I've got. There's something here that I can teach people and help them get to where I've gotten, because they're just doing it the wrong way. That's all. They're doing it the harder way. So yeah, anyway, so does that answer your question? Credentials is I got there myself and I was like, hell yeah, I've got to help others.
I just wanted other people to see, okay, you're legit. You're fully legit. You're fully qualified. You have a bunch of properties. You know what you're talking about.
Yeah, I do, yeah.
Just wanted to get that one out of the way.
Thank you.
Why do most people in Australia get stuck at 2 properties?
They get stuck primarily because they do this thing called negative gearing. That's why. So it's this silly thing that was sold in Australia, which funnily enough, nowhere else in the world does it. And they're actually look at us like, what on earth are you Aussies doing? Like, this is kind of silly. So I'll try and simplify this as much as possible.
Please go, because that was one of the future questions.
Okay,
What's
cool.
negative gearing?
Okay, cool, good. I love the questions you had. So negative gearing is essentially where Aussies focus too much on capital growth, right, which is the value of a property house going up. But they neglect the cash flow side, what we call the rental yields, right? Whereas in other countries, it's the other way around. They focus on cash flow too much, and then they don't focus on the capital growth, like especially over in America, right? And so what I teach is you actually need a balance of both. So capital, which is the value of the house going up, you need that in order for the cash funds to buy the next one. It's called pulling out equity. Because the average Australian can't save $100,000 every year to buy a property every single year. Like, that's fucking hard. Like, unless you're a successful in the top 1% of business entrepreneurs, like, sure, they can do it. That's fine. And I've got a lot of those clients. But also the average Australian can't do that, right? It's fucking hard. They probably only earn $100,000, right? Well, the average wage in Australia is what, $96,000
before
or
tax.
something. Yeah, right? So it's about getting that first deposit. But what they neglect in Australia is the cash flow side. And so they do this negative gearing thing. I don't want to go too much into the weeds of it, but essentially in late 80s, early 90s, the government brought out this thing to target high income earners to say, hey, you doctor, lawyer, dentist, you have a high income. We want to give you a tax incentive off this. So let's do this thing called negative gearing, which is like essentially where, because your property is high growth, but it's not cash flowing, we'll give you these tax incentives off your 9-to-5 job. And it's so silly because all it's actually doing is locking you into your 9-to-5 job more. So it's where you're basically spending $1 to make 10 cents back. And it's kind of silly to do that. Now, at the start of when you're building a property portfolio, you typically need a high amount of capital because everyone starts off typically broke, right? So what we do is we plan that in to say, right, we need a bit now, but don't just focus on doing that as a strategy, like this negative gearing thing, because you're going to get stuck on 2. So we basically map out and make sure that you never get stuck in building a property portfolio. That's what we do. So that's negative gearing, high, very, very high level. And it's just silly to do that forever. Does that answer the question? Do you think I've simplified that?
That does. There's one concept that I would love for you to explain if someone still don't know about it. Equity. What's equity?
Ooh, okay. So equity is the value of your property going up minus 10%, then minus what you owe. That's the formula. So what equity is, it's where when you buy a house and it goes up in value, when that goes up in value, you can go to the bank and say, hey, I'll give you an example, right? Say, for example, you bought a house for $400,000 and now it's worth $600,000 12 months later. So it's gone up by $200,000. That's called equity. You can go to the bank and say, hey, bank, can you please give me this, cash this out as hardcore cash? And they'll be like, sure, what do you want it for? Right now you could cash. Sometimes they actually want a breakdown. most of the times they don't. And they'll say, yeah, no worries, you can have this money. Now, you could either A, go to the casino with that and fucking blow it, or do something silly, which is, this is what I say, where the average Australian treats their house like a fucking ATM. So silly. They go out and they use that equity to go buy something silly that's non-income producing. For example, a car, right? They go get the nice fucking $100,000 Beamer, right? Or Mercedes.
The
right?
G-Wagon.
The G-Wagon. Gold Coasters, geez. So anyway, so they go do that, right? And then they're just forever then swapping their time for money to then pay for that. Whereas I say, pull out that equity first, then use that to fund the next property, so that way you don't need any of your own cash at all for the next deal, the next deal, the next deal, forever. So I've used zero of my own money from the second property onwards. That makes me smart, because then I just use the bank's money, the bank's money, the bank's money. Because equity, when you say, hey, bank, give me that 200,000, that's not your money. It's the bank's money. OPM, other people's money. So that's how the average Australian can easily get rich in Australia, is by using that equity as the cash funds to buy the next one and the next one. It's just like leapfrogging. So many Australians own their own home, have $500,000, $200,000 even in equity in their property, and they have no idea that equity is dead money. We've got to pull it out, say, bank, give it to me, pull it out, put it into another machine over here to make it work for you whilst you sleep. And then you use those next properties to then fund the stupid liabilities, such as the home, the PPR, or such as, you know, you want to build a pool into your home, or you want to upgrade the car. Have the cash flowing assets fund those silly things. It's just about swapping it around the other way. Build the investments and the passive incomes, then use that to fund the silly stuff in life.
So equity is this imaginary thing that is also very tangible and you get access to from your property increasing in value.
Value, correct. Thank you for summarizing it. Oh, you're good.
Just making it a little digestible in there.
Yeah.
There's negative gearing.
Yep.
Is there positive gearing?
Yes.
What is it?
So positive gearing is where the rent far exceeds the expenses to look after the property. So when you buy a property, you usually have things like the mortgage, right? Now, most people think, oh, I just need the rent to cover the mortgage. There's actually so many other expenses. You've got things like water rates, council rates, landlord's insurance, building insurance, property management fees. Plus my team we also have a buffer of $1,200 maintenance as well. We include in that. And you want to have your rent surpass that. So this hand here on my left hand, if for those watching on YouTube, is my expenses to look after it. And my right hand over here is the rent coming in from the tenant. I want it to be above that. Now, in Australia, people don't think that that's possible to achieve. It absolutely is possible to achieve, but it's just about buying the right asset at the right time. And that's what my team do, is just make sure that we plan the right asset, because there's no such thing as a dumb property. There's heaps and heaps and heaps of awesome properties out there. It's just about planning the right strategy at the right time for that particular person. So yeah, that's positive income.
Why do people in Australia don't believe that it is possible to have a positive gearing property?
Good question. Because the yields typically in Australia are quite low. That's why. So it's because we've also, from a mindset perspective, have been convinced to do the negative gearing thing. And so we are attracted to buying inside Melbourne and Sydney, because that's where a high amount of our people move into Australia, right? People move to Australia, they primarily start with Sydney and Melbourne. But guess what? You know, a higher amount, we have more people moving interstate than what we do have coming into Australia.
Interesting.
So they come into Australia, they come into Sydney and Melbourne first, they suss it out, and then they're like, oh, hang on, there's all these other cool parts of Australia. Let's move out over there. So it's because of the lie of negative gearing that we've been sold to focus on. So people's focus is in that area. So of course, you're not like looking for other areas. The other big thing is because emotionally, we're like, oh, we've got to buy next door because I can see it and I can feel it and I can touch it. And usually where you live is usually not going to have like the higher yields. So that's another reason why. The higher positive gearing is harder to find. True. Absolutely true. But it's not impossible.
How many properties do you currently have?
6.
How much money have you put towards having these properties in total?
I love answering this question. $42,000. That was it. That was my first deposit. Put down 10%, and I've never used my money ever since then.
So $42,000, you got your first property, which
Yep.
was worth how much?
$420,000.
And from there, you basically just waited for the capital growth
Yes.
to happen, correct? Grab that equity, bought your next
Yep.
property.
Yeah.
Everything from deposit, everything came from that equity?
Everything. Literally
Yeah, right.
everything. Deposit, stamp duty, pest and building inspection reports, conveyancing fees. What else is there? I always have like a 5K maintenance buffer just to fix stuff in the next property just in case. Literally everything. Actually, you want to know a fun fact? I actually didn't even have, this is how much I scrambled for my first couple of properties. I didn't even have money really for I was so broke. I'm literally was like, when I was settling on property, because I bought property number 2 and 3 very, very quickly. I went back to back. I didn't even have money, the $1,200 that I needed for my conveyancer. So I said, hey, conveyancer, I really need to get this property across the line. Rather than taking your bill from like the settlement, hey, do you mind just pushing out your invoice and I'll pay you like 4 weeks later afterwards? She was like, yeah, no worries, because she could see the hunger in me. And I had also done a deal with her before, so she trusted me. So yeah, I was fucking broke every single time after I bought each property. And I'm glad that I went that hard, that as quick as what I did.
I love this. I love this story. So essentially, you utilize your equity from the first property, got the next one, and you have done exactly the same
Yep,
for the remaining properties.
correct.
Yeah, right. This is one thing that I would love to get your thoughts on.
Go.
I see some friends and most people, they go on to buy their first property and they buy a thing that is 700K in the low end. Most of them, they go into $1 million property plus, right? And then they do a job that they hate or they're not very stoked on it. You know, they're living a 7 out of 10 life. They want to get out of it. Then maybe some of them, even I've seen that they have this side project that they just want to do so badly that they know that it could be super successful. But now they have this house mortgage. And they're trapped on the job. And I'm seeing it. This is how I see it. I see it like you create a fucking prison in there for yourself.
Yes.
And then even when I have told them, like, from my outside perspective, coming from a place where I don't have a property right now, but I have absolute freedom.
Yes.
I can choose to do whatever I want every single day.
Amazing.
Right? And I do what I love every day.
Yes.
I could choose not to work.
Yep.
I choose to work because that's me. I'm a high achiever. I'm here to make, massive things in this life. And my mission is too big to stay back or to chill. But the way I see it is this is a whole prison that you've been sold to, that you needed to get a house, that it needed to be this big, that it needed to be this fancy. And I see all the expenses as well that go into having a big house. They get the bigger couch, they get the bigger TV, they get the bigger XYZ. Oh, we have to paint it. Now we have to do this. And I'm just like, man, this is so much money for this. And is this your ultimate house? Is this really it? Is this the one? So, but now they have this massive mortgage. And when you tell them like, hey, you could actually sell your house and quit your job and pursue this thing, they're like, no, I never in my life will sell the house. I literally have people tell me that. Yeah. So my thoughts is this is insanity, right? But I'm just keen to hear your thoughts on this.
Yep. Thank you for bringing this up. And also, thank you for also being the person as well that is making people think a little bit differently. And it's hard, because we are indoctrinated so much in Australia that the big Australian dream is to own your own home. It is literally suffocating people. So that's where this terminology called rent vesting comes into place. So for me and you, same sort of values, right? I am here to help people get freedom. I actually couldn't give a rat's ass about property. True. I'm never on realestate.com. I actually don't care for it. I just care for whatever's going to make you free. That's it. And freedom, typically for most people, is to have financial freedom to literally roll out of bed and do whatever they want with their day, and have location independence, live wherever they want to in the world as well. and have the financial freedom to physically make the decisions and start that business if they want to. So owning your own home, the definition of an asset is something that produces income. Your home is your liability. I'm sorry to tell you, for any Aussie out there at the moment,
Leave. Don't tell them, please.
people hate it when I tell them this.
They're gonna get so triggered.
They're so triggered, right? They come to me and they're like, oh, I'm stuck. I can't borrow more money. And I'm like, yeah, man, because you got a $1 million debt that you are like the little minion going to your 9-to-5 job to pay this thing off. Yuck, right? I have millions of dollars of debt. And guess what? I ain't responsible for any of it. I have customers, aka tenants, who are paying that off for me. So I don't need to wake up and roll out of bed every day and be responsible for it. On paper, yeah, sure, I'm responsible for it, but I don't because it's diversified so much. So rather than the average mum and dad who have got that $1 million house, riddled with debt, have to go to their 9-to-5 job and they're locked in to pay it off, I have $1 million worth of debt, for example, and that's spread across 3 different families. 3 different families are responsible for paying that off, right? And that'll compound over time. So rent vesting, the terminology of rent vesting is what I do. And it's literally the number one tool that allowed me to fast track and build my wealth. So when I bought that first house, it was this beautiful house. I built it brand new. I actually don't teach people how to build brand new because it makes you get stuck a lot easier. A lot harder, sorry. It's harder to build wealth off brand new. But anyway, point being is I had this house. And this pivotal moment in my life, me and my partner were living in what we call the crack den, right? We're living in this horrible house. And I said to my partner at the time, sorry, I'm getting a little bit emotional. I said to my partner at the time, I was like, babe, I need you to can you please trust in my vision? We can't go and live in this house. We're about to move in it and do exactly what you just said that most people are doing. We're about to move in there. And I said, we need to shift gears. And I said, we actually need to stay living in this crack den instead of moving into this nice house. And we're going to be rent vestors instead. And she was like, why? And I said, because we can build a portfolio quicker and then we can actually have true freedom because freedom isn't moving into that house. And that was one of the most challenging decisions we ever had to make. And my partner was like, this is against everything that we're taught. And I'm like, I know, but think about it. Everything that we're taught ends up being the average of everyone else. Do you want to be average? She's like, no. So I said, okay, trust me that I've got this. And she trusted me in the process and thank fuck. So yeah, owning your own home is a liability. Being a rent vestor, which is where you have the freedom to live wherever you want to rent, wherever you decide to live. Fuck, it's so free, man. You can actually explore the world more. And you can build your wealth 10 times quicker because then your home, which is non-income producing. This is a quote from Robert Kiyosaki. He's like, your home is a liability, doesn't produce income. So he's really famous for that. He's the guy that wrote Rich Dad Poor Dad. Yeah.
All right.
So yeah, that's the biggest thing that holds most people back. When I tell them, when they come to me and they're like, oh, I've got this $1 million, I can't borrow any more money. And I say, yeah, man, because you've got a home. You've got it's called a PPR, principal place of residence. I'm like, that's the thing that's weighing you down. And that was the sacrifice that I made, was not to have a PPR. And you realize how much your borrowing capacity improves, and that allows the bank to give you more money to keep going and keep going and keep going. So the PPR is the one thing that holds a majority of people back, unfortunately. And unfortunately, most people aren't willing to sacrifice that because they're emotionally attached to this thing. Of course, we've been indoctrinated for your whole life. It's the great Australian dream. No, it's not. That came from American banks, actually.
Average is the enemy of excellence and greatness.
Oh, ouch.
Honestly, it's so hard to unsee the things in the matrix, in the system, once you see them. And most people operate from that place of like, oh, I have to do this because I've been told my entire life that I need to do this. I need to buy this massive house. I need to put all my money in to showcase it to people around me that don't even care.
It's a shame.
This is just one of the big lies that they've been told.
One of the big ones. Yeah.
One of the big ones, your big house, your big home.
You know that if you actually studied money, like if you think about it, right? We are told, go swap your time for money and that's the answer, and save your way to wealth. Actually, it's literally the worst thing to do is save your way to wealth. Man, if you actually understand money, which is just compounding and inflation, once you understand those two things, then you can truly be free. And the biggest ways to get free is business and real estate. Fact.
Yeah, and if you're trying to save your way to wealth, you'll never get there.
You won't. There's no millionaire
there's no way.
that
There's
says,
no way.
I got here because
Yeah.
I saved my money. No, they didn't. They invested or created a business.
Save as much as possible. No inflation is eating all your cash.
Yes.
Doesn't work like that.
No.
So, but yeah, and I wanted to say as well, massive congrats on you for pursuing this vision when you had zero proof of it, and when you had to explain people around you, and you needed to get people around you as well to get on board with it, because it is extremely difficult when you have this vision, you have zero proof that this will happen. You just know, you have done your research, you have seen other people do it, you know this thing. But for other people, especially if they've been operating, with old beliefs or inside the matrix, or with popular perceptions of reality that are incorrect or maybe are not the best way of doing things, it's extremely hard to try to convey this vision, especially if you need their support or if you need them to get them on board with the mission. Because I've been there myself too. And congrats on just sticking to it and just basically, that convincing people to jump on board, because it paid off, right?
Thank you.
You're absolutely free. You're doing what you love and you're crushing it. So well done on that, because it's very rare to meet people that also have come from nothing.
Yeah.
That's why your story resonates so much with me, because I know what it feels. I know exactly what it feels not have any money and just scrape everything. Eat. I heard in one podcast that you were eating peanut butter and not having.
Did you listen to that?
Of course, I listen.
Thank you, Ben.
I'm a professional, Leaf.
Thank
I
you.
do my research.
Thank you.
So I know you had a point where it was very difficult, and you were trying to just gather as much money as possible to put into this mission. I've been there.
Thanks,
Eating
man.
just tuna, just chicken and rice every day, not allowing myself to do anything just to save money to continue to pursue this mission. So
Can I ask you a question?
well done. Yes.
Do you think that made you where you came from? Do you think that helped you to get you to where you are today?
Absolutely. I needed the struggle. Most people see the pain and difficult moments as setbacks.
Yeah.
I switched that mindset a long time ago to just see it as, holy shit, this is a great opportunity. When things are going very hard, this is a sign that we're doing the right thing. Like even right now, we're optimizing a few things within what we're doing for our clients to help them go even more viral, to become famous at what they do, to become the number one in their space. And it's pretty scary, some of the things that we need to do, because it requires, ramping up everything that we're doing, putting a lot of stress on our systems, and it's gonna cost us money, and it's stressful. And that's how I know that's the right thing that we need to do. The little things like that. And I'm telling you that one because that's the one that it's happening recently, right? So, but it has always been like that. Every time I was scared to do something, when I first invested in my first coach, in my first business coach, it was one of the scariest decisions I've ever had to do. I was like, how the fuck am I gonna pay this? It's so much fucking money every month. How am I gonna do this?
Yeah.
You just make it work.
You do.
Fully paid off. When I first invested into my first team member,
Yeah.
I was in one of the scariest things I had to do. I was just thinking, why the fuck am I gonna pay someone that is not even as fast as me, is not even as good as me, to come here? How long is it gonna take them to take? I have to teach him, I have to coach him, I have to train him. What if he quits at the beginning and then I wasted all this time and money? It's one of the scariest things. Fully paid off. It was the right thing to do. When I told my partner to, quitting her job and coming work full time, it was one of the scariest things ever as well.
Man, it takes courage, doesn't it?
It does.
It takes courage.
It does.
Guts to be like,
Yeah.
the only person that can trust in this is you.
Exactly.
Only person that's got you
Exactly.
get out of this comfort zone is you.
Exactly. And you do have to, I've found that you have to be in a place where you're against the wall and a sword, and you just have to find a way forward. Because when you have a safety net and, you have plan B, I don't believe in plan B shit. I don't believe in
plan
that
for
shit.
plan B and you're
Yeah.
planning to fail. Like,
I had too many people from the system telling me when I was quitting dentistry, hey man, that's a dumb decision. You're being an idiot. These videos, you will never make as much money as a dentist, blah, blah, blah. They told me all this bullshit. And they were, and then that was, most of them were telling me this was a whole bullshit idea that I had in my mind. I remember doing YouTube when I first got started, and people that it's not like I was expecting support, but I wasn't expecting any comments, were literally laughing at it, telling me, sending me texts, man, this is so stupid. Why are you doing this? I had to overcome so much bullshit to get to where I am that, you know, once I got crossed over those moments where you have zero proof, it's this weird vision that you have in your mind that everyone thinks you're delusional. If you can progress after that, and you also have the patience and seeing the big picture and the long-term vision, not thinking that how can I get rich in 12 months, how can I, you know, have become the #1 property coach in 6 months or whatever. If you're thinking long-term and you really have a bigger mission of why you're doing this that goes beyond you, you will not give up.
amen.
You cannot fail.
can.
I haven't met someone that has been committed to one single thing for 5 years plus and doing the sacrifices, you know, putting all the money towards that, reinvesting in themselves, not investing into their mind as well.
Yeah, you can't fuck it up.
How can you fail? Tell me, how can you fail?
can't.
I haven't seen it happen.
Yep.
I
Pure
have not
focus,
seen it.
3 to 5 years, go fucking hard. You cannot fail.
Exactly.
Everything's a lesson.
Exactly. So, you know, like that's why your story resonates so much with me,
man.
because I've been in all of them. And but going back to your question, if I think this made me, this is one of the biggest reasons of why I got to the place that I am. I'm still far from where I'm trying to go, but it has been just going against everything that everyone told me
Yep.
when I had zero fucking proof. And now, guess what? They're all saying, congrats, that's awesome. I always
Yeah.
believed in you. This is
I
great.
always believed you.
I
Yeah,
knew
but I know
it.
you didn't.
Man, you know how many people I have that they come and they have told me, I knew it. I knew it. No, you didn't. I remember. I remember.
Yeah.
So, and a bunch of really interesting things happen when you show people what's possible. And it started as well, like, as a way of proving them wrong.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm gonna prove you wrong. I'm gonna make this happen. But it evolved to a different place where I think you can get more benefit out of it when it's, I'm gonna prove myself right.
Yes.
I don't give a fuck about opinions anymore. Because these days I don't even waste my time. I don't tell people. I tell my people around me, here's what we're gonna do. Here's what we're gonna get to where we were trying to get. Here's what we're gonna implement now. Oh, this is too hard. Oh, this is, don't care. This is what we're doing. If people
You're like
think,
standing strong in that vision, man.
yeah, because I have seen it paid off so many times. And now I have professional help as well. I have a network of people around me. So it's different because now I also have instant feedback for stuff, not only from a coach, but also from my close network of friends that are all high achievers. So it's easier these days to make decisions because of my own experience, but also because of the cumulative experience in my surrounding.
Yes.
So
You've now gone through the inner work, though, as
Exactly.
well. You've gotten through the fear of judgment of other people's bullshit,
Yeah.
blah, blah, blah. Now it's just about paying them to fast track your knowledge and different ideas. And then you've just got to fucking step forward and take that action to get out of that,
yeah.
to get that next
And,
step.
and another thing I wanted to touch with you, because I think I did mention it to you on the yacht party, that how cool is that you have a day one girl as well.
What, sorry?
A day one girl.
What's a day one girl?
So a partner that has been with you since day one.
Oh, thank you.
That-
Oh, my God.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was something else. I just held the vision and I was like, there's this fucking cute ass girl. I'm really like, I just know that she's the one.
Yeah.
I did there's a bit of a catfishing story behind it. But anyway, we won't go to public with that one. Anyway, and now 9 years, she's been my fucking queen. And I play a lot of like I would say more like the masculine role in the relationship. And for anyone out there who is the feminine, I can't stress to you how much that the masculine fucking needs the feminine so much. Like, it is absolutely powerful. It is powerful. Like, my fiance can whisper just one thing in my ear and that'll fucking light a fire up my ass for the next 12 months. She's like, babe, I went on this retreat once, right? Business coach. And she goes, all right, you head to Bali, babe. She's like, when you come back, you don't come back until you got a $20 million plan. And I was like, all right, babe, I've got this. So just the power, it's usually, I think, is it, what's his name? What's the famous guy's name?
Peterson?
Jordan Peterson. He says, all you need is just one person in your life to believe in you, and that's it. And that's my fucking queen, for sure. Yeah. She just believes in my vision. And at the start, though, she didn't. I'll be honest with you. It took me nearly 5 years for her to finally feel safe enough to trust in my vision and that I was knowing where I was going and what I was saying was going to work out.
Yeah.
5 fucking years, probably more. I think actually 6 years.
Yeah.
And then finally she's like, okay, I trust everything that you do if you've proven yourself that you know what you're doing. So I was like, thanks, babe.
Yeah.
Thanks. We've got
That's
this.
freaking awesome.
Yeah.
And it resonates a little bit as well at this stage of my life too.
Yeah.
Because my partner has been, since, things were not incredible, and she has seen the entire growth so much to the point that she quit her safety job to come join the mission.
Whoa,
So it was a big moment, because when it happened, when it was official, I remember just thinking, holy shit, she quit a very well-paying job, all her safety, all this thing, to come work at something that is extremely risky.
Wow.
It's just growing. She's not going to get as much money as she was getting. All these things, like everything pointed that this wasn't probably a safe thing for her to do. But
huge.
As they say, don't bet on the horse, bet on the jockey. Yes. So, yeah. It has happened with every member of the team, really.
Yeah.
It has come from a place of, I believe in this thing and I believe in the person behind it.
Wow. It's incredible awesome. Once I find it very uplifting when you have that one person behind you. Yeah. And being like, when they take that leap of faith, like, it's even more power and more fire to be like, fuck, they're trusting in me as well now. It's not just me. Somebody else is trusting in my vision.
Absolutely.
I've got to prove.
Yeah. Because for a long time, you have to be your biggest fan. I still think I am my biggest fan.
Yes.
I always see it that way. I'm my biggest cheerleader, supporter. I'm gonna get things done because I've always have. That's the way I see it. But when you also add external people that they're like, oh yeah, I believe in this thing too. And they also show it. They prove it.
Yeah, they prove it.
They come, they support, they do X, Y, Z. That you're like, holy shit. Yeah, this thing is far beyond just me now. We're a unit.
A unit.
Yeah, that's how it is. And every person, every business, every top creator, everyone that is at the top of the industry, they have an elite team behind it. It's never a one-person thing. Don't believe this bullshit that you have to do everything on your own. You could, to a certain extent, but it will get to a point, especially if you're striving for something great, that you will need an elite team of people behind you to get there.
Absolutely. It's that next level.
And this is a bit of a derail, but I love your story. And also the mindset thing. Because people underestimate, everyone wants the secret of stuff. How do you become a millionaire? How do you make this business successful? A lot of it comes down to mindset.
Yes.
A lot of it comes down to what you have in your mind, your ability to think for yourself, your ability to perceive reality in a different way and get rid of all beliefs, all systems, all patterns that are not going to help you get to where you want to go.
Yeah. So limiting beliefs hold so many people back.
Yeah. So it's definitely always an important topic, especially with high achievers like yourself to touch. So people can start seeing the patterns, like, oh, I see, like, doesn't matter if you're a property investor, you own a podcast agency, or you're into whatever you are, guarantee you there's patterns across all these industries and across everyone that is behind these businesses and these missions. So going back to property.
Yes.
What is the hardest thing for someone to get into property investing?
The hardest part would have to be the first deposit for most people. Then from there, it's the limiting beliefs. Honestly, it's the mindset. It's going to come back to that,
goes
right?
back to the mindset.
Always comes back to that. It's the mindset of not listening to mum and dad or Uncle Bub down the road who are like, nah, don't buy in that area. Or nah, you've got to touch it or feel it. Or, oh my God, doom and gloom. The media is telling us it's all crashing at the moment. Like you've got to look outside of that. So yeah, I'm going to say the first deposit, then followed by the mindset of not listening to those around you. Like I'll never forget when I got that big bump in equity after my first property. And I mentioned, so at this point in the time, this is where I'd gone to my partner and said, okay, babe, we're not going to live in this house. We're going to go buy 2 other properties with this instead, blah, blah, blah. I'll never forget I sent a text message to like 6 people who weren't really successful in property at all. I wouldn't say were successful, but they were as close as I could find in my life, who are older than me, 10, 20 years older than me. And I'd send them a text saying, hey, which option should I do? Do I, one, go buy another property negatively geared in the beach called Frankston in Melbourne? Or do I go buy 2 properties which are out in a regional area, they're more highly cash flowing, blah, blah, blah. So I had these 6 people say, go buy the negatively geared property in Frankston, right? Whereas my mind was like, hang on, I'd actually been watching this other guy who was actually really successful, my first mentor. I'd never met this guy, but I just followed him and watched every fucking YouTube video. I stalked the hell out of this guy and I listened to him nearly, I'm not over exaggerating, 7 to 12 hours per day because I was listening to him whilst I was at work, on the train to work, blah, 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 every waking minute. And this guy would tell me his formula was go and buy the 2 out in the regional area. And I'll never forget, I had to stop listening to everyone else's opinion who hadn't yet reached where I wanted to go. And so I was like, you know what? Fuck all their opinions. I'm going to listen to this random on YouTube who I've never met because my intuition tells me, well, he's 27 and has bought 70 properties. I'm going to follow what this guy's doing. That was the biggest leap of faith that they ever took, was that right there. I was trusting my intuition to listen to this random.
I want to give you a couple of scenarios.
Yeah.
And here, what would you do?
Okay.
Or what would you recommend for this person? All right. Scenario 1. Someone is making 10K per month and they got no properties.
Can I ask, as a business owner or as a
business owner?
Okay.
Business owner making 10K per month and they want to buy their first investment property.
Yeah.
And their ultimate goal is to get 20K on passive income from properties. What should they do?
Focus on your business. Scale your business, because if you've got a business where you're making $10,000 per month, you have customers and you have a proven concept of something that people want to pay you for. So I would focus all of my energy on scaling that, because that's 10 times easier, to be honest with you. If you just hire coaches, whatever, get out of your own fucking way, learn how to multiply that, and then use that to then funnel that over into the passive stuff in real estate. That becomes 10 times easier, because then what would happen is if you go into the property thing, there is a balance, especially when you're a business owner, right? Because this is the reason why I asked you if it's a business owner or an employee. If it was an employee, I'd actually say the other way around, to be honest with you. So for a business owner, you've already got the mindset of how to look after yourself. And you've probably got a bit of courage there to step forward and do some things that are outside of your comfort zone. So do that, because it's easier to make money, because your opportunity to make money is unlimited in business. So I would do that. Focus on business. Then once you've got huge amount of cash flow in your business, we could talk about the numbers specifically, but that's what I would do. Focus on business. 10x that. Then the investing, the passive income over there in another channel is way easier. And then that can be set and forget. And that can be just something that you just make in your sleep. That's it. Because for business owners, typically your niche is business. Whatever you're selling a product on, focus on that.
Absolutely, yeah. And reinvesting will pay way more than any stock or probably any house going up. Your business can make 10x that. Second scenario.
Yeah.
Let's say someone is making 500K, 600K a year, business owner again. No properties, no anything.
In profit?
Let's say, no, because that's the last scenario that I'm going to give you.
Okay.
So let's say that profit is 50%.
Okay, that's
so
250K.
250 to 300K.
Okay.
What advice would you give to them if they're looking into property? So
Awesome. I would say, first of all, we need to find out what your borrowing capacity is. From there, you probably have a very healthy borrowing capacity. We just do somewhere between like 1 to 2 properties per year. But what I would say is that don't go into the rabbit hole of trying to need to know everything. Just like business, outsource it to the experts. So you'd probably need, honestly, if you wanted to do it the smart way and pay for professionals and everything, say about $100,000. $100,000 in cash. That's all you need for one house deposit, and then you won't need anything else from there onwards if you find that, if you do the right formula in what I teach. And then you just do the set and forget property. I wouldn't go into active stuff. I say this even to my business owner clients who are tradies, for example, right? I've got a lot of people, when I say tradies, I mean people who have like a roofing business or a concrete business or some sort of trade, right? And they're active in it. And they come to me being like, oh, I need to touch it and I need to renovate it and I need to fix it up. And I'm like, no, man. You want something where you can't touch it and feel it because you get emotionally attached to it. And because you're in the industry, you think that, oh, I can save $50 here or there fixing this bloody toilet that's broken. No, detach your emotion from it. Don't touch it or feel it. Outsource it to find wherever the top 1% suburbs are and just focus on the data. And leave it as a set and forget thing because your energy and your focus is best spent on your business making more over here. Then when you make more over here in your business, you can 10x the compounding over in another way whilst you sleep. It's easier to do that. Did that answer that question?
That did.
I rambled a bit.
Next scenario.
Go.
Someone that is making $1 million a year.
Yep.
Let's assume that close to that is profit.
Right.
So let's say 800 to 1 million a year. They have one property, let's say. What should they do if they want to get, let's say, 100K coming on passive income?
Passive income. Cool. That type of person probably has a high expense lifestyle as well. Say, cool, keep the lifestyle, man. It's all about getting the highest ROI in life. You've built what you have in business. So fuck yeah, spend the 500,000, right, per year, living a nice life. That'll give you a fucking decent life in Australia. Living on 500K of pure profit. And then the other 500K, just reinvest that straight away. And what I would do is I would focus on investing that for like 3 years. If you think about it, that would be like 1.5 mil cash over a 3-year period. Fuck me, man. You would build a multi-million-dollar empire very, very, very quickly. But again, you wouldn't have to focus too much on strategy around the type of like the lending stuff that I help with a lot of people. The strategy then would just be, rather than learning how to multiply, because the multiplying of the money would be easier, your energy would then be focusing on how to keep it, because your cash flow would be so high. Then what you would need to do is you need to have a really, really good team of accountants. Me also, because this is my forte, is like how to keep your money from the government getting a lot of it. And you just need an elite team of brokers, accountants on how to keep it from the ATO so you can hold on to more of it so you can compound even more of it again. And it just comes down to business structures, trust, all of this sort of really deep stuff, which is the stuff that I throw off the most. But yeah, just get your money and compound it. Get it to work is the short answer to that question. And then, yeah, you wouldn't really need to invest much. It depends. And again, it depends on everyone's lifestyle. Like, what does their goal look like? What does their freedom desires look like as well? Yeah.
What's the difference between yourself and a buyer's agent or mortgage broker?
Thank you. Okay, so a mortgage broker, think of them as like your lawyer for lending. It's their job to get the bank to try and give you the most amount of money. Now, I play a huge role in that as well at the start, just because of where I've come from as well, in terms of like me being broke, trying to build it. So I've got a lot of hacks there. So the broker, your lawyer, to get the bank to give you more and more and more money and to structure it so that the bank gives you more money in the future. So that's their job. A buyer's agent, think of them as like your doer. So they know where the top 1% suburbs are for growth, and they know how to go up against a sales rep to buy the property for you, to make sure you don't buy a dud, right, that's full of problems, and to also make sure you don't overpay for a property as well. Fuck me, man. The amount of people right now that are overpaying $40,000, $50,000 for a property, it's so intense right now. It's wild. So that's what a typical buyer's agent would do. As a coach, I'm like the third party opinion. I'm like the person who's going to teach you how to fast track and how to go like really aggressive. So buyer's agent typically would be like really, most buyer's agents out there actually are just like, here's a property, see you later. Fuck off, found your property, right? Whereas I am like the person to teach you how to build an entire portfolio and not get stuck. My one-on-one program is really about holding everyone's hand right up until a tenant's in the door, because it can be quite daunting as well. Like a lot of people have a lot of fear around, oh, what if something breaks? Or I don't even know questions, right? A lot of people take one person's opinion and like a broker and accountant will say, no, don't do this. And then that's it. And then they give up. Whereas my role really comes in to say, okay, how can we ask better, high quality questions here so that we can actually understand the context of somebody else, of the professionals that you have on your team? Because people get really confused. So like, well, my broker told me this, but then my accountant told me something conflicting. Who the fuck's right? Usually everyone's right based on the information that they have. It's just that you don't know how to interpret that information. So I'm kind of like, think of me as like the interpreter, essentially.
Interpreter. Yeah. Do people pay you for the program, or do you get like a back end from their purchase of their house? Like, how does it work?
Good question. I have a coaching program. So most people would start off having like a free 15-minute chat with me. I have a strategy call, which is just like an hour and a half with me, which is like $290 at the moment. And then I have a full-on coaching program, and I have another VIP, 12-month money program. That's a cool one. But yeah, typically my coaching program is the most common one that people use. And fuck, most people just use their equity, so they don't even have to come up with their own cash, which is pretty cool. So yeah, it's I love what I do, man.
First home. I know in Australia there's a couple of government grants that you can apply, like first home buyers, and I think there's another one if a property is new or is being built. Should you do that? Should you just go and buy a property that's going to be investment? Can you expand a little bit on this? Because obviously I don't have the knowledge that you have, but I understand that there's kind of like a couple ways to go about it. But if you go the investment property route, you don't get access to those grants, or you have some limitations. Can you speak on that?
Fuck, you're so good at this. You just blow my mind away. So short answer of it is, do whatever you need to do to get your foot in the door for the first property. That's my answer. The way that I look at the government grants is they are a last resort to get your foot in the door. If you are somebody where your savings rate, I'm going to use my hands here for a second. Let's just say my left hand is the rate of which property is going up and my right hand is the rate of your savings account. Let's just say that the rate of the properties going up is quicker and is going up greater than what your savings can catch up with how much you need. Then I say take the government grants. Now, the government grants, though, are ultra restricting. So if I'm talking to a business owner here who can be very, very successful, I say, fuck the grants. Don't use them. They restrict you too much. I'll explain why. Whereas if you're someone who's working a 9-to-5 job, you don't have any other business idea, and your savings, it's really, really hard to save that first deposit, I say, fuck it, take the grants, because guess what? Even if you were to buy a dud in Australia, you'll probably do it right. It is factually true that property doubles every 10 to 12 years in Australia. Now, I just want people to get their foot in the door for that first one, because that's typically the hardest. You'll typically do it right even if you buy a dud, like I just said. So the government grants, the reason why they're really, really restricting is a couple of different ways. Number one is it typically means you have to live in the property for the first 12 months. That fucks you in multiple different ways. Number one, it now becomes, like I was telling you before, a liability. So it impacts your borrowing capacity, so you can't move again. Number two, it means that you're then going to be emotional, you're forced to buy in an area localized to you, which means you're not typically looking in areas that are going to be higher growth. So you're not looking at the data. It's just more of an emotional purchase. So overall, it'll slow down your wealth. And number three, because you're going to live in it, you'll typically get emotional. And what you were saying before, I'm going to fix this now. I'm living in it. I'm going to spend doing this up, blah, 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 because I want to make it look nicer. There's a whole bunch of different reasons why. And the other main reason is majority of the grants at the moment are favoured towards building a brand new property. So what you were asking me before, either buying a brandly new built one or building it yourself. And again, when you're building or when you're buying off the plan, I fucking hate off the plan. Typically, they are charging you a profit on top. So like you're buying it at a higher cost than what you could buy an established house for. So, but again, if that's the only thing you can afford and get your foot in the door, then fuck it, do it.
Lender's mortgage insurance.
Yeah.
Should you use that, or should you save up to the 20%, I believe it is, for your house deposit?
Good question. 90% of people fucking use LMI, guys. I've used LMI about 9 times in my life. I'll continue to use it. LMI stands for Lender's Mortgage Insurance. So LMI is looked down heavily upon in Australia, which is really sad. But it's literally a tool to fast track your wealth, similar to rent vesting, right? For those who have a lot of capital already to begin with, like they're already successful business owner, maybe they've got $500,000 cash, or maybe they've got, $1 million of equity in their home, which is a lot of my clients in Sydney and Melbourne. They don't have to do that. However, majority of people, it absolutely makes sense to put in a smaller amount of deposit so that you hold on to more of your money to get to the next property quicker. And the other thing is, LMI, it's added onto an entire 30-year mortgage. And once you truly understand inflation, man, inflation will just erode it away anyway. LMI is tax deductible when you buy the property in your personal name, and the property will usually outperform the cost of LMI anyway. So LMI is a beautiful tool that I love to fast track your wealth.
Tax hacks with property.
Yeah. Tax hacks. I love these. You're just like riveling off right at the moment. Okay. This is how I think about property. And this is, have you read Rich Dad Poor Dad? Cool. Have you read his other book, Cashflow Quadrant?
Yes.
Okay, cool. This is a quote from Robert Kiyosaki's tax advisor, Tom Wheelwright. I read his book and it just blew my mind. He says, taxes are a set of incentives. That hurts a lot of people to hear that. They're like, nah, fuck the government. I don't want to pay taxes. But if you do what the tax code says, for example, when you're a big business owner, they will give you a bunch of tax incentives because they're like, thank you, Mr. Big Business Owner, for creating jobs. Here's a bunch of tax incentives. Hey, Mr. Investor, property investor, thank you for creating roofs or a roof over people's homes. Here's a bunch of tax incentives. So property investors benefit the most when it comes to the tax code. So it is very easy for property investors to make $300,000. I'll give you an example. To make $300,000 across your jobs, business, income from your properties, and pay zero in taxes legally. It's possible. So that's the way that I think about taxes. In the short form, it is, it's just a short-term sacrifice for a long-term gain that we benefit from it the most. People come to me thinking about, oh, but what about land tax? Like, screw land tax. It's a really small bill to pay in order to have cash flow. Like, imagine, like, the average person that'll build out a portfolio get to about $100,000 or $100,000 of passive income in usually somewhere between 10 to 15 years, just with starting off with one deposit. 100 grand of passive income. And people sitting there focusing on, oh, but then I might have to pay a land tax bill of 5 grand. Who cares? Wouldn't you rather pay the government an extra $5,000 in order to make a passive $100,000 of passive? Fuck yes. So I've got one of my mentors who owns 250 properties. His land tax alone is 150 grand a year just in land tax. His cash flow is above $3 million. Who cares? It's just a mindset. It's the cost of doing business.
When buying a property, should you buy it for a business owner that has a trust, a company set up as a trust? Should you buy the property on your personal name, on the trust?
Okay.
What's the best way to go about it?
I'm going to be careful with this one. And the reason why I tell you is because in the industry, people don't like talking about it because it's actually heavily regulated. And actually, I'm not licensed to talk about trusts. Unfortunately, I'm going to give some context before I answer this. Yeah. Unfortunately, in Australia, the only person who's licensed to talk about it is an accountant. But accountant is not a wealth builder. Mm-hmm. Sucks dick. But everyone's told, go to your accountant, right? And accountants don't typically like trust because trusts negatively have this negative association with it, but trusts have a huge amount of borrowing capacity benefits, huge amount. So there's a lot of pros to trust and there's just as many cons. So I'm not going to answer, it's not a black and white answer to answer your question. So I'm not going to say yes or no to that. However, more often than not, the benefits of a trust outweigh the cons most of the time. So for most business owners, it would make sense. However, you definitely need to know the pros and cons before looking into it. So it's not a black and white answer. I would never say yay or nay. That's something that I work very deeply on with each of my clients individually, because there's a lot of other things that we've got to consider, like where else are you getting your profits from? Are you a sole trader at the moment? Are you a company structure? And then my job is essentially to work with my clients on how do I ask the right questions to my accountant and how do I set the right context of what I'm trying to achieve. Because for most people, what they're trying to achieve is to protect their borrowing capacity, actually, because that's where most people get stuck. And there is a loophole within trust that can help you protect that. But the accountant, who's the one who has to set it up, they usually don't give a rat's ass about your borrowing capacity, do they?
Yeah.
They're there to help you reduce your taxes. So it's a really difficult conversation to work out, who's right? Is it my broker? Is it my coach? Is it is it my accountant? Well, actually, we just got to create the context behind it all. That's it. Yeah. So not black and white answer, but a lot of pros and cons.
Are all your properties under your name?
Good question. No. Bit of a balance. If I'll be honest with you, I didn't find out about the benefits of trust because everyone was so scared to talk about it. I didn't find out the benefits until I was property, I think, number 4 or 5. I wish I had known more about it.
Yeah, right.
So a lot of my first properties were bought in my personal name. I wish I'd known about it, but also it is sometimes healthy to have a couple of properties in your personal name. And now, because of the learning of how awesome trusts are, I actually surface my training of that, like the pros and cons. I actually just give that to my clients straight away so that they are informed, so that they can make the decision. I don't want to hold this sort of information back because it's too good to hold back, basically. But I have to be very careful in how I deliver it because of how regulated it is in the industry in Australia.
And just checking, if you had to do everything all over again, would you have like just started buying properties under trust or like?
I'll give you the answer. It's like an 80-20 rule.
80-20.
80-20. So I'd say probably for most people, on me on a personal level, I'd say 80% in a trust, 20% in a personal name. And of the 20%, usually it's the first 1 or 2 properties, max. Because you don't want to get to a point where, like, if it can protect your borrowing capacity, you don't want to apply it when it's too late. Usually most people find out about it when it's too late. There's ways around it. Like you can sell off a property, right? And then swap it out and then put it inside a trust, but it triggers this thing called stamp duty all over again. So it doesn't normally make sense. But sometimes I plan that within people's journey, within people's portfolio to say, okay, you might be stuck at a borrowing capacity right now. Let's work out which property is holding you back. Okay, it's this one. It makes sense to sell off this one. And then we'll replace it, start fresh, and then we'll start buying properties this time inside trust, for example. So it's just a bit of a timing game. I'm going to nurture that in. Yeah.
Should the mindset be when you get into property investing, you buy this thing that you should never sell? Because when you sell it, like, what do you do with that big tax bill that comes from selling? Can you explain what happens if you sell them?
Yeah.
Like if you were to sell your properties right now, what are the tax bills associated with that? And what's your opinion or what should you do?
Fuck, such powerful questions. Okay. So when it comes to selling is typically something that most people regret. So where possible, I try to mitigate my clients to not have to sell. The short answer is going to be, we sell if you're stuck. We sell if there's a property weighing you down. Now, to answer the question in terms of the taxes and the liabilities, so usually there's this big thing called capital gains tax. Capital gains tax is also heavily looked down upon. But again, if it's something that's going to free you and unlock you to move forward, then fucking let's do it. So for example, I was in that position. I got rid of that first property I told you I bought. And the reason at the start of this episode, I said I wouldn't build new. So that's the perfect property that doesn't tick the 3 boxes that I teach, which is buy in higher growth areas, make sure it's not negatively geared, and make sure that it has value add. So it's like kind of like an olderish house, so you can renovate it or add value to it in some way. So I sold that property because it was holding me back. And then what that triggered for me is capital gains tax. But the benefit of me selling that meant that I could repurpose that money somewhere else to make a higher ROI. So whenever I'm thinking about selling, I'm thinking of, and if you're listening to this and thinking about selling, please reach out to me. I have a free training on it. If you're thinking about selling, you need to think, what are going to be the selling, what were the costs to acquire it? What are going to be the selling costs to sell it? Then what are going to be the replacement costs, which is what most people forget about, is that third thing. And if you were to sell and replace it, is that money going to work for you even more? Is it going to unlock you? I had a client actually message me this morning. He's like, Liv, should I sell this property? He had, he was a young guy. This property was cash flowing. He had no debt associated to it. But I told him not to sell it. I was like, no, because you're not stuck. You can move forward. You have borrowing capacity and you have capital in other ways. You don't need it. And this little property doesn't have a debt associated to it. And also there was an emotional sort of attachment to it where I said, you know what? It's also kind of like he Airbnbs it out. It's kind of like an emotional thing when he goes and visits it. And I said, you're never going to be able to buy a house again that cheap ever again. It's worth like 150 grand. I was like, bro, your money of selling that, it's not going to, the physical money that you're going to get the ROI on that is not going to be higher or greater than the emotional and money that you're making from it right now. So it doesn't make sense and it's not holding you back. So don't sell it.
What is one thing that most people don't know about property investing?
Oh, one thing. Dude, there's so many things. How can I narrow it down to just one? Man, there's so many. I'm going to turn around and just say the rent vesting thing, honestly. That your home is the thing that's is holding most people back. I honestly say that just because, like, yeah, there's a whole bunch of other tips and I could go on forever. There's like 100 things. But it's just, that is the biggest thing that's holding most people back that come my way, is living in your own home is the thing that holds most people back. But if there was to be kind of a little golden nugget, I'm going to throw a little nugget out there actually.
Go for it.
Okay. One would be, there's a little trick when it comes to getting bank evaluations. So let's just say, this is one of my favorite ones, that's why I'm mentioning it, and ones that I had to use in order to move faster. So let's just say you're trying to get a bank evaluation high enough to pull out equity to go to the next one. There's this little way where you can, rather than, now I'm a big advocate of using brokers all the time, except for one scenario. And this is when you're trying to pull out get a better, higher bank evaluation. Only then would I go to a banker directly. When you go to the banker directly, you can actually give them, when they ask you, hey, what do you think the property's worth? You can actually give them a slightly higher number as long as it's within reason, and they will literally take your word for it. Which means they'll say, no worries. So let's just say, for example, on realestate.com, let's just say you have a house and the range says it's somewhere between 400,000 and 480,000 is the property's value, somewhere between there. Let's just say you've gone to the broker and CBA, Commonwealth Bank, have come back and said through the broker, oh, yeah, it's worth like 450. You go, okay, but let's just say you're 10 grand short for the next deal. You need an extra 10K. You can actually go to the exact same branch and say, hey, can I please get a bank evaluation, please, on this property? And they'll say, what do you think it's worth? And you say, oh, I think it's worth 480. You can give them the higher end of that scale and they'll literally take your word for it and say, okay, no worries, as long as it's within that scale, and they'll give you that extra money as a bank evaluation as equity. And that can literally be the deal breaker for the next property. And that is literally what I implemented. and it works 100% of the time. It worked for me every single time, and 100% of my clients, 100%, I'm not even lying. I've calculated, I've actually tracked this thing for every client I've told this to. Proof of concept, it works. And they've come back and they're like, Liv, I just got back from the bank, it fucking works. They gave me an extra 30K. And I was like, yes, next property over the line, tick. There you go. That's a hack for you. Listen.
The secret sauce right there.
Yep.
Should you buy many properties that are, let's say, around the 400K mark or on the cheaper end, or just a few that are higher price point?
Okay, good question. The short answer is lower. Whatever the lower end properties are that you can buy at this moment, given moment in time. And in saying this, like, you could be a business owner who's doing, $10 million a year, whatever, you're fucking doing awesome. Fine. You can withstand buying $1 million properties in Sydney, right? 98% of people can't do that. Short answer is cheaper properties, but not too cheap. It doesn't mean, like, you can literally go out right now and buy a 2-bedroom unit in fucking Brisbane, and Brisbane's, I'm saying this because it's actually probably a shit area. You can actually buy a 2-bedroom unit for like $200,000 still today.
Really?
Right? Doesn't mean that's a good quality asset. The cheapest that my team can buy properties at the moment in the top 1% suburbs for growth and a really high suburb for growth, plus have a really good balance of rental yields, the cash flow, is about $400,000 to $450,000 right now. At the start of 2024. However, that goes just fucking up and up and up and up and up, right? And that's typically like a house. But again, it doesn't necessarily mean that you say, well, no, fuck units, right? Because sometimes it makes sense to chuck in a unit sometimes. And again, we plan that for the right person at the right time, right? Or maybe we start you off and buying the bigger, like, only like an entire unit block, like 4 or 6 units or something. So for majority of people, the answer is going to be you want to go lower, but as long as it's in a good area. And the other big reason why you want to go lower is because you can diversify. Diversification is critical. So for me, I want to own more doors. The more doors I own, the more customers I have. That means the velocity of how many times I can increase my income can go up more. So I'll give you an example. During 2020, I owned a lot of properties in Victoria because that's where I lived to begin with. And during COVID, Dan Andrews was like, renters, you don't have to pay your rent anymore. Man, the fucking calls that I got, people, my mom, my grandparents, everyone's like, oh my God, sweetie, you okay? Like, your property's okay? Your tenant's paying rent? And I was like, yeah, man. You know why they're paying rent? Number one is I bought them cheap. So guess what? There is nowhere else cheaper for them to go. Number two, all of my tenants, most of them are on Centrelink. Guess what happened during COVID? Their income went up, didn't it? Right? And number four, I diversified my customer range. So I have millions of dollars worth of rent, but I have millions of customers diversified. So I don't just have one big $1 million house with one customer that is responsible for paying that off. Diversification is key. And it allows you to diversify location as well. So I want to own multiple properties across multiple states because different states have different rules as well. That's another wormhole.
I like how you call them customers because it made total sense as soon as they're customers.
Yeah, they're customers. I treat them like a customer. So I also, from an ethical perspective, I treat them like a customer, right? So I charge really high, like not above market rate, but I'm okay at charging the top above market rate for a high quality service, just like a business owner would do, right? But guess what? I'm going to offer a fucking amazing service. So whenever they complain about something or something's broken, I don't fuck around. I get it fixed for them straight away. That's how, from an ethical perspective as well, they like that. I have long-term tenants in my door and they're willing to pay higher amounts as well. And they don't fret that much because they know I'll fix you as soon as it gets broken.
Yeah. So you're being a good business owner.
Yeah. We've got to treat a property portfolio is just a business.
Yeah. If you could go back to your 20-something-year-old and give 3 pieces of advice that will help her fast track her way into wealth, live a better life, a happier life, what would those 3 things be?
You know what? None of it's got to do with property investing though. These are my 3 things. Number 1, when you're thinking about making an income, so making income to live, don't focus on the money that you're making. Focus on who you're going to learn from. So if you're in the 9-to-5 corporate world, grab a role, a 9-to-5 job, with the purpose of learning to grow and learning different resources. And if you can, get into a big company, because this is what I did personally. Target a big business, target a big company where you can grow and move locations and frequently learn. Be like, right, I'm going to go into that area. I'm going to learn this skill set for 12, 18 months. Move on. Move. Keep growing within that area. So get the job, not for the income. Get the job in order to learn and learn from the mentors. That's number one. Number two is network as much as possible, because your net worth is your network. Other way around. Network is your net worth. People and building relationships have gotten me to where I am today. So be curious and network. Build those relationships. Go outside of your comfort zone. Go and fucking say hi to that random person in the elevator. Say hi to the person on the plane sitting next to you, on the train sitting next to you on the way to work. Networking has been a critical, pivotal moment for me. And the next one would be move locations, because I moved interstate. When I moved interstate, I realized my awareness really opened up to what and who I was surrounded by. Because you know the rule, the 5 people you surround yourself by will be the result of you are going to be the average of those 5 people. That is fucking true. And the easiest way to remove myself from the partying and the drugs and all of that I did in my 20s, the easiest way was to move interstate. What that also provided me was I had to learn to network as well a lot more. I had to learn to build relationships with people in their 30s. And up in Gold Coast, people are like in focus mode, entrepreneurial hub. They're like, don't have time to build fucking friendships. And I was like, where do I make friends? That in itself was a skill set as well, to network. And that really helped. And to that point number 3 around networking, a lot of people come to me saying, oh, Liv, like, but how do I find more elite people? Like, I feel lonely. And as we know, like the entrepreneurial journey, it's lonely. And so does the investment world. It's very similar. And that's one of the reasons why I became a coach, because I was like, oh my God, I just learned all of these hacks in this fucking book or on this YouTube. And then I'd go home to my partner and I'd be like, oh my God, babe, I just learned about this. And she'd be like, okay, cool story, babe. So I had no one to share it with. So create a community. One of the easiest ways, podcast. Listen to fucking podcast. That's exactly what I did. Back in the day, there was no such thing as podcast 10 years ago when I was listening and learning everything, but there was YouTube. That's where I found my place. And so I felt like, as you would know, being a podcast in your niche, is you feel like when you're listening to them, you feel like you're in the room. And so if you're listening to this, yeah, you're in the room, dude.
You're here.
You're here, yeah.
What's the worst piece of advice that you have ever received?
The worst piece? Oh, good question. So this one, I'll never forget this. Oh, there's 2. Can I tell you 2?
Yeah.
So one guy told me, he was a builder, and he goes, oh, buying an established property is buying somebody else's is buying someone's problem. And I was like, oh, for fuck's sake. Such a bad mindset. And I said, well, what could be somebody else's problem can be somebody else's opportunity. So that was one piece of advice. Would never listen to that again. Another one is from an entrepreneurial perspective. I had a coach, and I can't believe this guy's a business coach. He told me, he was trying to like get my business, and he would like do free calls and whatever, just be like, oh, I'll give you this free information. And he told me, he's like, oh, in the coaching industry, you'll probably be capped at like making 30K a month. And he's like, above that, like all these problems occur and you probably won't get above that. And I was like, what a really limiting belief to embed in me. And I believed this guy for like a month, and it broke me. And thank goodness I had powerful people around me who were like, that's so shit, Liv. Don't listen to that. Like, yuck. And I was like, yeah, got rid of that. Bang. Was not true for me. So I've done well above that now. But yeah, that was another big bad piece of advice.
What is the best piece of advice you've ever received?
Best piece of advice. You know what? I'm going to say this one actually comes from my mum, and she has, I try to remind her of this, that she tells me about this all the time. And she said it so many times growing up in my mind that she repeated it so many times that I now just believe it and know it to be true. And she said, sweetie, everything in moderation in life is okay. And what that meant to me was try things, give it a go, and it's okay to dabble in this as long as you balance it out with this over here. So for example, if you want to eat the block of chocolate, eat the block of chocolate, but eat the fucking apple the next day. If you want to invest in property, but don't be so focused on where you're putting all your money over there that you forget to live. So, but also you probably can't live every single day as if it's your last, because is it factually true that you're going to die tomorrow? We don't know. It is likely that you're probably going to live till you're 80, right? So just having that balance of life to get the highest ROI in life. And that's my whole entire metaphor now.
I love that, by the way. Great mom. Great mom advice.
Thank you, Mum.
There's one last question I want to ask you. Is there something, or what is something that most people don't know about Liv?
Something that most people don't know about me. Oof. This one's a hard one because I actually share so much of my life on socials. Probably one thing was the confidence that I have now. I actually didn't have this at all. I wasn't born with this confidence that I have. It was created. And it was created from, the confidence comes from two different areas. Number one is being rejected from a love perspective around friends and family. I had no friends growing up. I was like the weirdo. I was extremely, extremely angry. Now, I was really angry for a couple of different reasons as a teenager, right? Classic female teenager growing up. But, my parents got divorced. That really impacted me when I was 15. And I was extremely sexually confused as well about my own sexual identity. And all of those just like compounded. And so because of that, I always had this shitty energy growing up. No one wanted to hang around me. So because of that, I dealt with a lot of rejection and not being included because people are like, oh, she's fucking angry. We don't want to hang out with her. So that built the stamina of being okay with rejection. And then that also helped from a sales perspective. So true fact is I did sales for 10 years of my life. The first 10 years, so from 16, first job out of school up until 26, all I knew was sales. So that sales and rejection, I just got used to it. So I think those things built my confidence. So a lot of people can get I get it all the time. They're like, Liv, you're quite over-empowering when it comes to your confidence. And I'm very, very aware of it. And it wasn't just naturally born. It comes from the stamina of being okay with rejection and being comfortable with myself. And everyone can learn it. So if you're listening to this and you don't have confidence, you can fucking learn it. It's a skill.
I absolutely agree with that one. I love that you ended that note because I had a similar journey with confidence as well.
Did you?
And it just gets better by you working on it. It's 100% a trainable skill to learn to have more confidence.
It's internal shit, hey?
Yes.
Yeah.
Liv, you're an exceptional human being, not just a property coach, a property investor. You are an extraordinary individual. I was stoked to have this conversation. I'm pretty sure people will get value out of this, and that makes me happy. That's the goal with every episode, just to get as much value for people as possible. Where can people find you, work with you, learn about your services?
Thanks, man. I appreciate it being here. Just jump onto any social media platform and look out for Olivia Ward. That's it.
Sweet. The links will be down below as always. I will see you guys on the next episode. Good vibes for everyone. My goal for this podcast is to help 1 million creative entrepreneurs make more money, have more impact, and create their ultimate reality. The best way for you to support this mission is by sharing the podcast with anyone you think will find it valuable. Leave a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, and follow us on all social media platforms at The Creator Grid and at Creator Nelson. I will see you at the top.